Well, my view of church is probably different than some. The church in modern days has become almost competitive. You know, we try to do things to bring people in, and there's nothing wrong with bringing people into church. Obviously, we want to see people coming to church, but ultimately the goal is not getting people to fill seats in church. The goal is directing them to Jesus. That's our goal, is to disciple people. So this is close to home for me. It gave me my first opportunity to preach at 13 years old.
Whoa! Whoa, Gary.
When I was 12, I had a prophecy spoken over me. God really opened my eyes to see that if those 2 years were to help one soul into the kingdom of God, it was worth it. We prayed, we fasted, we anointed him with oil, we did all these things, and every day I watched him get worse and worse and worse. All we see and we know is this 60, 70, 80 years of we're blessed. And that's our view. But God sees way beyond that. I also wasn't vocal about my faith. I wasn't sharing this good news. It was an overwhelming sense of his love from me that, you know, you learn about in Sunday school, but it became real. It became experiential for me. Jesus died for more than to keep you out of hell. This generation, more than any that I've ever experienced, has lost the ability to communicate the good news. What Jesus has done, the gospel, that's what it means, is good news.
I saw this one preacher that I follow online that was saying the church has never been more loud, but they've never been more ineffective. And I was like, oh, that hurt. What's up, guys? Today's guest is Gary Williams. He's a pastor I've known for a good amount of time, probably 15 to 20 years. I know I'm only 27, but he's really kind of been here since the beginning. I've always seen him from afar, and over the last couple of years, I've been able to help out with his ministries. He's helped and preached at my church that I grew up in many a time. He's also the uncle of one of my good friends, Dan, and so we talked about a lot of things, so much that we had to break it down into two parts, but this first part talks about the beginning of his relationship with God. He opens right off the bat regarding his own personal struggles with God and the growth that happened through all these things. He also talks about prison ministry and a couple other topics that I think a lot of you will find engaging. So this is part one out of part two. Part two will be out probably mid-April or so. Thanks. Enjoy. Yeah, I was just saying, Gary, that you know all the people in the SOUHEGAN Valley. you probably know like 20 to 30% of like everyone in southern New Hampshire, maybe. I guess that's part of being a pastor, right?
A pastor and a lot of things that I've done, and volunteer boards in town and fire department.
Not only are you a pastor, which I was just saying a second ago, we're live now. Sometimes I do like a podcast intro, but I think I need to get a new catchphrase because it's not hitting these days. It used to be, this is where I chop it up with my friends, kill time, and speak what's on my mind. We'll be doing all those three. And you are a friend of mine. Well, I consider you more like an elder in the faith, man. And one of the biggest reasons why, like I said, what I was trying to get to a minute ago, is that not only are you pastor, but you have 7 kids or 9 kids?
9 kids.
9 kids.
Soon to be 9 grandkids.
Jeez, dude. Oh my goodness. God bless you.
Yeah, he has. He has.
You're a chaplain. You're a business owner. You're chief. Is the title chief for the Milford Fire Department?
No, I was a retired captain.
Oh, okay.
I didn't want
excuse
the
me.
chief's position. he can have the chief's position.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we have a lot to talk about today, man. One of the main reasons, like I said, I had many reasons why I wanted to talk to you. But out of, kind of as I've grown up in my faith and, I grew up at Light of the World, I'm actually I said, was telling my friend the other day, I'm like a little bit church homeless. I'm going to church and whatever, but I'm just trying to find like, you know, the church that I grew up in is great and awesome. They went through some hard times even over the last couple of years, but they came out of it. God's still moving and doing all these things. But I'm just like, God, what's the next thing for me? And who should, like, I know that spiritual community is always, you know, my mom always uses the scripture, don't forsake the assembling of the saints.
Yeah.
And she like beats it over my head all the time, which is very funny.
Well, my view of church is probably different than some.
Let's hear it.
The church in modern days has become almost competitive. You know, we try to do things to bring people in, and there's nothing wrong with bringing people into church. Obviously, we want to see people coming to church, but ultimately the goal is not getting people to fill seats in church. The goal is directing them to Jesus. That's our goal, is to disciple people. So the church is bigger than a building. Yeah. It's bigger than one small community. My view of the church is much bigger, which is one of the reasons that we chose to use the name SOUHEGAN Valley in our new title, and not just limited to one town, but and our goal is to be a blessing to the greater body of Christ. Understanding that Jesus has one church. There's one church, one body, one head. We may worship in different places in different ways, but there's one church. And so I think if we really get a hold of that and understand that there's one church, one body, that there may be things that we have at SOUHEGAN Valley that other people don't have. There may be things that they have that we don't have. And we work together and we strengthen one another, and together we bring the message of the hope of the gospel to this community.
Yeah. It's interesting too, because not that it was on the front of my mind, but sometimes you see, you know, one of my dad's closest friends when before he really settled down in New Hampshire was his friend. Oh my gosh, I'm forgetting his name now. I'm so sorry, man. But Tony Booth, this guy who was from New York, and he was rightfully so, like, he was a pastor of a black church. And obviously there's different like church cultures. You know, at times there's churches with a lot of white culture in it, and then there's churches with a lot of black culture, and then Hispanic culture and Asian culture, and go down the line. But it is very interesting because, like, even when are you a big like Francis Chan? I shouldn't say fan, because like I know now that even Francis Chan,
stuff that he's
I find him admirable, like a lot of his ideas.
I've enjoyed a lot of his illustrations, and
Have you? I assumed you've read like Letters to the Church and some of his other books. Maybe.
I haven't. No.
Really? No. Okay. Well, he's one of the guys I remember. Even my dad was saying, like, I don't know exactly what the timeline is. Maybe like early 2000s, where he was. I think his story is that he was in like kind of a mega church, and then he like went more into
pastor of a mega church.
Yeah, and then he went into other. I think he kind of started in or he like, didn't he move into like home groups almost, or home churches?
I believe so. I don't know the whole story.
Okay. Yeah. Well, anyway, I'm just going off the dome here too, and it was interesting because when, you know, he had this like a lot of like other pastors at the time that were more. Which, you know, as I'm saying this, it sounds so badly, where I almost caught myself where I was like, other pastors that are like more prominent, or their names are more popular, or, you know, maybe later on we can talk about celebrity pastor culture. I'm sure you have your thoughts and opinions on that. But it's interesting how, I'm just excited to, I love that you already started off with giving like your perspective and definition of the church.
Well, I think we're blessed in this community, right? Because, I mean, for 19 or 20 years, we've done our Christmas Eve service together with Light of the World. Yeah. You know, we've got a church culture in the SOUHEGAN Valley that I think understands this concept that I was talking about, which is I think very unique, and I'm very thankful for the men of God that are serving in this in this community that have a heart to bring the gospel to this valley, and not just promote a church, you know.
Yeah, like someone's brand almost of a church, you know. And so, yeah, let's start in the beginning with, I guess, your early beginnings, like growing up and becoming a pastor. Like, did you even want to be a pastor and all this stuff? And my ADHD, of course, like I always tell all my guests, it turns on as soon as I hit the record button. Yeah. But I think you're one of the, I don't want to say rare, because there's stuff that I am working out with my own relationship with God very much like I'm trying to think of the phrase, like some like almost working out your faith with fear and trembling, right? Fear and trembling, yeah. I think you've been solid for so many years, man, and I really, really admire you for that. And once again, I get to hear all the behind the scenes stories from my good friend Dan Toms. Like, your kids are studs, man. Like, I remember even just at the wedding, I was connecting with some of the kids and whatever. Or even if I see, like, I only saw like Caleb, half the time I would see Caleb at like twice a year. One would be at Christmas Eve on the Oval, or then if there would be like a worship night or something else. And they've always been cool, but obviously I wish, dude, I should know the names of all 9 of your kids, but once again, shout out to Silas and Nate as well, and everybody else, and Ben, and Ben's got a great voice too. He does, by the way. Yeah. My head was down the other day because I was at SOUHEGAN Valley a couple weeks ago, and I was just I looked up, I'm like, is that Gary? And then I'm like, oh, it's not. Yeah. And what was he? He was singing. I think he was doing that Elevation song, "Same God." Oh yeah. You are the same God. Yeah.
We're blessed. We've got a lot of talent and musical talent in the family. I've got 2 drummers, Nate and Jeremiah.
Oh, okay.
Both phenomenal drummers. And
I didn't know Jerry did that. Oh.
Dan's our bass player. He's not my son, but consider him
he's close enough, right?
My nephew. Caleb is a guitarist, and now Abigail.
Right. Yeah.
Is
she doing electric?
Really, she does both. She fills in when Caleb's not there.
Yeah.
On acoustic, and Esther's almost there. She's playing keyboard, so she works with us on Thursday nights and trying to get comfortable playing with the band.
Yeah, because there's a good amount of people, man. You got probably at least 100, I would say, on a Sunday morning, maybe more.
If everyone was there, they'd be about 200. Yeah. So
yeah, that's awesome, man. Praise God.
35 baptisms last year.
Whoa,
it's exciting. Yeah, a lot of new believers, a lot of kids, which is really cool.
Yeah. Man. So, hey, I'll just turn it over to you, man. So, I heard that you give us a quick summary of like the early Gary childhood, and then you started in a home church, right?
No, I grew up my young years. I was in the Hudson First Baptist Church.
Oh.
Involved in the Sunday school. I never missed Sunday school. I loved church growing up. And 10 years old, our next door neighbor led my mom to the Lord, and within a month or two, myself and my sister Heather, and I was 10, Heather was 8, Barbie was still really young, but and God really touched my heart, like changed me.
How old were you?
10 years old.
10 years old, yeah.
And about 6 months later, I wanted to be baptized. So we went to the pastor of the church we were attending, and you had to go through classes.
Yeah.
And I did. And when we finished the classes, he told my mom, I don't think he's mature enough. I don't think he understands enough of the Baptist doctrine. And he's going to have to come back when he's older.
What do you think about that now? You don't understand the doctrine.
And that 10-year-old boy that loved going to church, from that moment on, my mom couldn't drag me into a church. And within about 6 months after that, we started going to a born-again, Spirit-filled
Holy Ghost.
And a couple of months after that, I was baptized at 11 years old. Wow. And thankfully, all through my life, God has put men that were willing to mentor me and give me opportunity. from next door neighbors in the neighborhood that were teaching me skills. A lot of the electrical engineering background that I have was taught to me by a next door neighbor who had a shop in his basement.
Yeah.
Another neighbor that did welding and mechanical engineering. So, all growing up, I had people that mentored me. And then, I came to Christ, and I don't know if you probably wouldn't remember him. His name was Ralph Goodwin.
Sounds familiar.
So Ralph was an Assembly of God pastor in Nashua for years. And I knew Ralph before he was a pastor. He was working for Sanders Associates at the time, became BAE. But Ralph was like a mentor to me in my early years. And he coached me and taught me, gave me my first opportunity to preach at 13 years old.
Whoa! Whoa, Gary.
And afterwards, he sat down with me and just worked through some of the things that I needed to work on but constantly gave me opportunity. And I was leading worship at 15 and
really?
Just kind of so it really was cool seeing that process that God put men in my life that were patient with me and taught me and gave me opportunity. And that's part of the thing that I've tried to carry over into my life is, people come to our church and they see all the teens and they're like, wow, you got a lot of teenagers. And
you don't see that in churches here, man.
But my perspective is I want to give them ownership. So it becomes their church. So, I was looking back at the tech booth, because there's a lot going on there. You've got video and live stream and sound and the presenter and I'm looking back there and almost everybody back there is under 16 years old running the technology. And I just said, this is the coolest thing ever,
Yeah.
Because it's their church. It's not the place that mom and dad are dragging me to.
Yeah.
They've got a part in it. So anyway, I served I followed a tent ministry, an evangelism tent ministry, a guy named Bill McCoy, through my teenage years, from the time I was 13 to probably 17, up and down the East Coast, and saw God do some incredible things. When I was 12, I had a prophecy spoken over me that I knew that I was going to be a pastor, and I knew that in my heart I was going to be a pastor. But it wasn't until I was 30 years old that actually came to be.
Dude, sometimes God's timing is like, I'm just not always a fan.
Yeah.
It's just like.
But I had a lot to learn, and there were pivotal moments in my life. I think everybody has them. I've
had several.
I have too. For me, I was enrolled in Hesser College for accounting. I thought I wanted to be a CPA. My uncle was a CPA.
Really?
And I was a couple of months from school starting, and I'm thinking about, I can't sit behind a desk. I'm going to go out of my mind. What am I thinking? And I dropped out. And short notice, this was when Ronald Reagan, again, before your time, Ronald Reagan had fired all the air traffic controllers. So there was a huge vacuum for air traffic control. So I signed up at Daniel Webster College and went through a few months there. Wow. And at that time, Logan Airport had 5 runways, 3 of them intersected, and there was no ground radar. Everything was visual back then. And after just a few months of doing that and seeing the stress that was involved in that job, I don't want anything to do with it. So I signed up for heating and air conditioning and electrical engineering. So I ended up in college for HVAC and taking electrical engineering and enjoying it. And probably 7 months in, there's a guy that was a year ahead of me, and this guy was just bold, sharing the gospel with everybody, sharing Jesus. I mean, it just was everybody he talked to.
Don't you hate those people?
And
can't stand him.
One day, I said to him, I'm like, hey, his name was Bob. I said, Bob, it's really neat seeing you sharing with so many people. And he goes, are you a Christian? And I said, yeah, I am. He said, I never knew that. And those, you could have hit me with a shovel, and
that's
it would have
God
felt
talking.
better. And I was a good kid. I wasn't drinking and drugging and running around and partying, but I also wasn't vocal about my faith. I wasn't sharing this good news. And so I decided at that moment that no one would ever come in contact with me and not know who I serve. And so I became vocal about my faith and sharing with everyone that I possibly could and loving on the people that were around me. So my lab partner for 2 years, we did all kinds of stuff together, and now I'm vocal about my faith. So I'm getting made fun of all the time. I'm the preacher boy. I'm the church kid. And he never said anything. He didn't get involved in it. He just would chuckle and
He'd let it slide.
So we're in finals week, and Friday I'm sitting in the cafeteria, and he comes up and he says, hey, Gary, I want to talk to you. And I'm like, well, I got to head to class. I figured he wanted to study for finals. So I said, we'll catch up over the weekend. Well, we didn't catch up over the weekend. Monday I came into class, and my whole class is dead silent. People got their heads on their desks, and my professor walked up to me, and he goes, Gary, I've got some bad news. Rich was killed in a motorcycle accident Sunday afternoon. And I just stunned. I worked with this kid every single day for 2 years. And so we went to the funeral, little Christian church in Massachusetts, and the pastor was talking like he knew the Lord, like Rich knew the Lord. And I went up to him afterwards, and I said, I don't want to speak against somebody that's not here anymore, but you're talking like Rich was a Christian. And he said, you're a believer. And I said, I am. He said, well, let me tell you about Rich. Rich came to the Lord 10 years old. And I'm like, wow, I came to the Lord at 10 years old. And he served the Lord and through his teenage years. And at about 17, he started hanging around the wrong kids, going the wrong direction, and slowly just drifted away. And he said, my wife called him over and over trying to get him to come back, and we haven't seen him in several years. And he said Thursday night, he was right here at this altar, crying his eyes out, rededicated his life to Jesus. Now I know that's what he wanted to talk to me about on Friday. And I graduated. I never used my degree, but knew that was one of those moments in my life that, I realized that everything that we do has an eternal consequence. And I work a secular job outside of pastoring, and I'm grateful for it. I love the people I work with. I'm grateful for the paycheck, but ultimately I'm there for an eternal purpose. And God really opened my eyes to see that if those 2 years were to help one soul into the kingdom of God, it was worth it. And so, those events in my life were really pivotal. I ended up engaged to a girl that was a mutual friend of my mom's, and she was almost 8 years older than me.
No way, Gary.
Yeah.
Really?
And, nice girl, but from the very beginning, I knew it wasn't right. I'm working my way through college. She had a really good job, was making good money. And everybody was just expecting that we were going to get married. And one day we're in the mall. She's poking through the jewelry store, sees a ring that she likes, buys it, and she was going to wear it out of the store. Like, we're engaged. And I'm like, you can't do it. That's not how this works. So now I've got this ring.
The gall.
Because her fear was she was going to be an old maid,
Yeah, no,
and I was, just the means to get out of that curse, and so now I'm stuck with this ring. Everybody's expecting we're going to get married. I don't know what to do.
You're how old now?
19.
19. Yeah, that's still super young, man.
Yep. And so I propose, like, we're engaged. We've got all the wedding plans made. In fact, my wife, Stephanie, and her mom were going to make this girl's wedding gown. They were...
No way.
So Stephanie and Melissa were like sisters to me, for 7 years. I'll get to that. But,
cool. Yeah.
So we had all the wedding plans made, and then my dad got sick. He had cancer, and watched this guy that walked 8 miles every single day. In 3 months, he couldn't walk across the room, and we did everything we were supposed to do. We prayed, we fasted, we anointed him with oil. We did all these things, and every day I watched him get worse and worse and worse until the day that he died. And after the funeral, I walked out into the woods, and I was angry. I was angry with God because he had let me down. I felt like, I'd given my whole life. I'd served him all my teenage years, and this was one of the times, one of those pivotal moments, and I'm out in the woods, and it's starting to get dark, and I'm just seething inside, and I heard God ask me, Gary, what did you want me to do? And my response, I was cynical. I was angry. I said, God, that's a stupid question. You know what I wanted you to do. I wanted you to heal my dad. I did everything that I was supposed to do. Everything your word told me to do, I did. And you let me down. You didn't perform. And a few minutes went by, and I heard him ask me a second question. Gary, does your dad have cancer anymore?
Wow.
You see, it took me out of the perspective of mortality and gave me an eternal view. All we see and we know is this 60, 70, 80 years of we're blessed. And that's our view. But God sees way beyond that. And he brought me to the understanding of what Paul said, to live as Christ and to die as gain. We get that mixed up. We actually make it backwards. For me, to live is gain, and then when I die, I get Christ, right? When I live is gain, and then when I die, I get Jesus. And Paul put it the exact opposite way. For me to live is Christ. In him I live and move, and I have my being. But when I pass from this life, it's gain. It's a move forward. And that changed my life, that afternoon in the woods. Gave me a perspective of eternity that I needed.
Isn't it interesting how when, like, those times, whether you walk out into the woods or you're in your car or you're out on a walk and you have those times where you're essentially shaking the fist at God. I remember I've had similar times with God myself. It's really interesting because over time I had to like unlearn that. Like sometimes I feel like I knew that God knew all my thoughts and ordered my steps, but sometimes I would give like this filter or this filtered version of what I was thinking or what I was experiencing, and
God wants you to be real with him, Ben. He does. Read the Psalms. Read how David interacted with God. It's like, why do the heathen rage? Why are the wicked prospering?
Yeah.
Why am I struggling? Like, it's okay to pour your heart out to him.
Right. People act like the Psalms are just like, talking about the glory of God. It's like, as you mentioned, like my enemies surround me, and it's I still am to a certain degree where I'm like, I gotta be super on. Now, to be clear, guys, I'm not saying God, WTF.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, God will forgive you through anything, man. Like everyone comes to God through different ways, but there is sometimes where it's like, it was weird how like baked in it was, where I thought I was thinking too much about the way I would address God. And so when my dad and a couple other people that I knew were trying to show me like what true spiritual rest is being like, I don't want to say open-minded because that's not the word, but it's being like, it's funny. Graham Birch, who I think you remember, was saying, he was talking about the parable of the sower on Sunday. And then he was also mentioning how like to meditate on these things. And he's saying, I know some Christians can get turned off by the word meditation, but it's about this sitting with, I think of now for many reasons I go and I see a therapist now, and they talk about sometimes just sitting with your feelings and not getting all, because, I'm ADHD, I'm up and down. Sometimes I struggle with depression, but sometimes I don't have the ability to take my own self out of my mind and do all this stuff. And it's interesting just hearing you talk about that because, when I've had a couple pastors in here, they don't always talk about the first thing is like, they're vulnerable in dark moments with God, which I just appreciate you sharing about that. I think
one of the things that you'll learn about me, Ben, is I am who I am.
Yeah.
Like, I'm the same guy on Sunday morning behind a pulpit as I am.
Yep. And that's why you're in here, man.
So yeah, it was so through that process, I had after my dad passed away, I went to this girl and said, I can't do this now. We were supposed to be married in June. I said, I want to put this off till the fall. I can't do this. My family's not ready for this. I'm not ready for this. And she was angry, as you can imagine, and said, this is my wedding. And I said, well, you're right about that because I won't be there. And it was difficult, but it was necessary. It was something that, had I been sensitive to the Holy Spirit to begin with, I would never have gotten myself into that situation, So for a year, I didn't want anything to do with another girl. I didn't want anything to do with a relationship. We're working in the soup kitchen in Nashua.
No way.
And I'm headed into the kitchen with a tray full of dirty dishes, and Stephanie is coming out of the kitchen with a tray full of desserts. And I'm telling you, it was like the movies. It was like time just stopped. And she looks at me, and I looked at her, and it was like this instant. I can't even explain it to you. She would tell you the same thing. In that moment in the doorway, and I stopped, and I'm like, what have I been doing? Our families, so my mom and Stephanie's mom were best friends.
No way.
Stephanie and her sister Melissa were literally like my sisters.
It was one of those things. Okay, I didn't know that. Yeah.
And I'm like, for 7 years. And I'm like, she's been here the whole time, right in front of me. 14 months later, we were married.
Whoa.
And that was almost 34 years ago.
Wow, man.
34 years and 9 kids, and
jeez,
it's been amazing.
Do you do it? 9 kids and you're not even Catholic, man. No, I'm just kidding. Your wife's awesome, man. It was cool at the wedding last year. Like, I had never talked to her for more than 2, 3, 4 minutes at a time, and it was cool.
She's an amazing lady.
Yeah.
She's the most self-disciplined person I've ever met in my life. And
you're not disciplined?
Oh,
you
no.
seem pretty dang.
No
really?
way.
No way.
If I don't know what I would do without her. Honestly, I'm a visionary. I see things.
Yeah.
And I'll see an opportunity or something and I just run at it. That's my personality. I'm a fixer. So if there's something broken, I'm going to fix it. So when I see something, I just run after it. And she's the planner. So she sees me running after something, and she'll whoa. There's nothing wrong with what you're doing. Just let's get a plan.
No, that's the 9 kids.
Well, and that's to run a household like ours. She homeschooled them all.
That's wow.
And absolutely,
That's amazing.
Absolutely amazing lady. Yeah.
Did you think you were gonna have 9 kids?
No. No. I wanted to have a big family. I had 2 sisters, and but I always wanted to have a big family. But we didn't really set out. We didn't plan that like we wanted to have 9 kids. No.
Man, dude. Wow, that's interesting. I meant to ask you this earlier. So I'm so sorry to backtrack. That time when you were 11 and you met with God, what the word I would use is I would say we used to do these worship nights called encounter nights, and that for me, I obviously, I still am, but I've always leaned on I don't even know what. I'm a follower of Christ, man. I don't even know if I fit into the right, the clean denominations or whatever. Maybe we can get to that later. I always like having that conversation with men like you. But I think when it comes to, oh no, I'm not losing my train of thought. I had this in my mind. So back to your encounter with God. Was it obviously it was a spiritual thing, but sometimes people, a lot of my Christian friends that I respect and love, I have a really hard time. Obviously, I would very much lean towards, I'm someone who believes in spiritual gifts, charismatic worship. I understand not everyone likes that or kind of responds in that way. But I've always been there's no denying the Holy Spirit and all these things. And for me, one of my good friends, Josh Hartling, has a very analytical mind, and he's an engineer, so he thinks about things logically and scientifically. And I'm more the emotional, head in the clouds almost in a way at times. And you need both for your walk with God. But what was that moment when I've had it many times in my life where I have these spiritual encounters with God, but what was it like when you were 11? I'm trying to think of my real first time when God started knocking on my door, because I didn't miss much Sunday school either. I was the one who was calling on class, whatever. I was a worship leader for, in high school. Well, at the end of high school, and then I was on the worship team because I wanted to be like John Cooper and Skillet, all that stuff. To make it long-winded, I just want what was your encounter with God actually like? Was it a feeling? Did you see something? Did you see something happen in your life, etc.?
No, I guess it was an overwhelming sense of His love for me that you learn about in Sunday school, but it became real. It became experiential for me. One of the, I think I was 18. I was playing music in Greece, in Athens. I've been all over the world.
I'll talk about that later.
So I'm 18 years old, and it was the first time I'd ever been called to give my testimony. And this was a big church. It was a lot of people. And I'd never spoken in front of a group of people that big. And I found out 15 minutes before, hey, I'm going to call you up and I want you to give your testimony. And I'm in full out panic mode because I grew up in the full gospel businessmen's, circle. And my understanding of a testimony was somebody saying, I was an alcoholic, I was a drug addict, I beat my wife, I murdered people, and then Jesus got a hold of me. And so I'm 18, and I spent my young years in the Baptist church. I got saved at 10. I never drank, I never did drugs, I never ran around with girls, I never did and not that
excuse me,
but I didn't think I had a testimony. What do I have to say? I didn't do all this stuff because in my mind you had to have done all this bad stuff to have a testimony.
Yeah, you have to do one of those 5 things, right? No, not
and
at
so
all.
I got up and I just started sharing how the Lord got a hold of my heart at 10 years old, and then the light bulb goes off that God showed a 10-year-old boy who'd gone to church his whole life, showed a 10-year-old boy that he was destined for the same lost eternity that the drug addict and the alcoholic and the prostitute, that I was headed for the same place, that God could show a 10-year-old kid that in the eyes of most people was a good kid, could show me that I was headed for hell and bring me to a place of repentance. That's a testimony. And I went through my teenage years and college years, and I didn't have to go through all those pitfalls that so many of my friends did.
Yeah.
5 of the kids I went to school with are dead.
No way.
2 of them from drug overdoses, 3 of them from alcohol-related car accidents. Yep. And and that happened in my 20s. So, I began to realize God's mercy.
Man.
So we got married, and I was part of a church in Nashville. Mike Martell was the pastor, and Mike was like a father to me. Taught me a lot, instilled a lot of solid doctrine in me. Really built a foundation for me growing up, and got me involved in youth ministry. I traveled with him in music ministry. That's when I got involved in prison ministry. Was
right,
him.
I forgot about that. Wow,
we did the.
So you got married at what age, by the way?
I was 23. Stephanie was 18.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Shout out to her. That's young.
Yeah. She still looks like she's. Everybody sees us. They think she's my daughter.
Well, I'm sure she'll take that as a compliment.
Yeah.
So hopefully she's listening.
Yeah.
Man, prison ministry, huh?
Yeah.
It's it's interesting. We both are aware of this organization called Teen Challenge, and I think I graduated in 2016, so like a couple years, like God really started working on me. I think probably like 2015, 2016. I was always like, I think I was always in the faith. There's a couple times where I'm like more like where I would acknowledge the Holy Spirit like in my life and around me and in me. Like I said, it was 2015, 2016. And it's interesting because I had these times where even when I first learned how to play guitar or whatever, it was just it was this whole nother side of like, you say like you being learning how to like preach and speak in front of people. Like even when I was a worship leader, like I could do it and stuff, but I didn't feel, I never felt comfortable with it. And I think when it comes to when you're talking about like prison ministry and stuff, I'm like, that's the hardcore stuff. Because even at the end of my, like when I was getting out of high school or whatever, and God was really starting to work on me, I would always kind of like push it aside when we would have, because it was cool hearing like someone's like story and how I'm like, okay, well they're going to end up good now. So like, it's kind of predictable, right? Cause I just had a terrible, or just like an inexperienced, immature way of looking at things. But when I got out of high school and I saw the Teen Challenge people, which to be fair, it's not technically a prison ministry, right?
No,
but like people with like similar backgrounds or whatever, like I remember I would look forward to it because I would like actually see like the power of God in, because with growing up with a lot of church kids or whatever that at times were just didn't feel comfortable talking and speaking about their faith, which now I have pretty strong views on that, even regardless of where I feel I am at with God or whatever. Like seeing like people with like, once again, the redemption story, because like the whole thing about faith is God restoring people, and you can be restored, like you said, if you're a kid in church that goes and never misses a Sunday, or you could be someone that's down and out, or's never met God or said a prayer in their life. Everyone's really kind of on the same playing field. And
the truth is, Ben, that Jesus died for more than to keep you out of hell.
Right.
He died for more than to just get you into heaven. He died to reconcile you to God, a broken relationship. He died to reconcile you to the Father so that you could be his reflection in your generation.
Yeah.
So it's more than just, when I die, I'm going to go to heaven now because I prayed a prayer. It's an everyday relationship with the Father. And the only way we have that is because of the Son. He loved you enough that he gave his only Son to stand in your place. That's amazing to me. I stand in awe every day that the creator of the universe would want to know anything about me. Why would he bother? Why would he put up with all of my antics and all of my failures? Why? I don't offer him anything. I don't bring any talent to him that he doesn't have. Right. I don't bring any wisdom to him that he doesn't have. Why?
That's where and when I got out of high school, God showed me what the joy of the Lord was, which is, boy, do I need it now more than ever. But at the time when I was first experiencing this, and that realization and that, for me, it was obviously an emotional thing, experiencing the joy of the Lord. But even at the time when I was experiencing God's joy, I was doing 50, 60 hours a week doing power washing. My coworker at the time, I later found out, was, thank God he's sober now, but he was actually on heroin and stuff. And this is just when Waymaker comes out, the song. Mm-hmm. So I'm singing the songs at church, like Waymaker, Miracle Worker, like God's a light in the darkness. He's keeping his promises. And then Monday morning comes around, and halfway through the day, my coworker was slumped over like this. And me, who at the time didn't drink underage, didn't smoke weed or do any drugs or whatever, I'm like, it's weird that he's napping in the middle of the day. And then I had this whole one of a couple crises of faith where I was like, oh, my faith has to be above my circumstances and whatever. I'm literally preaching to myself right now as I'm hearing myself talk right now. But it's so interesting, and just tell me more about prison ministry. I'm sorry to get sidetracked, but what was the first time doing it? Were you nervous? Did you ever meet friends out of that, or? Well,
my first time going into the prison, I think I was 20, and we were in
that's ballsy,
a maximum security prison in Massachusetts.
Which prison?
MCI Shirley.
Oh,
so. And I'll never forget, before we went in, we had to present them 2 weeks ahead of time with a complete list of every cable, every adapter, every piece of equipment. And so when we got there, we bring the van in, bring all the equipment into they call it the trap. It's a room. You walk in, the gate closes behind you. There's no getting out. And we had to open everything, and they counted every single cable that we had, every single
in case you're bringing in drugs or whatever.
But just that feeling of walking through a door and having that gate slam behind you and having the door slam behind you, and it is a weird feeling at first. I got used to it after years of going in there. It was, I think, 18 years. I was working in the prison ministry there. COVID kind of shut that down, and since then they're so short-staffed in Concord that they haven't been able to run the chapel program. So
really, what was it like sitting down with people and because I'm sure because you would do services, right?
Yep.
And then you'd talk to people afterwards.
When I started going in there, we saw about 18 people on a Saturday night.
Because maximum security is that?
Well, this is at Concord. So this is a.
You went to Shirley later.
No, Shirley was my first person I went to as a teenager, probably 19, 20 years old. But I spent all those years up in Concord at the New Hampshire State Prison for Men on Saturday nights, and started going there. There was
Saturday night. That's impressive.
There was
you're a legend for that.
15, maybe 18 people, and after about the first year, the room was full. The room sat, I think, 120.
No way.
They wouldn't let the inmates in if there wasn't a seat for them, so they couldn't stand. If there wasn't a seat, they wouldn't allow them in. So Then it got to the place where they had to sign up if they wanted to come into the chapel. So a lot of these guys that were born again believers left their names off the list, and encouraging the unsaved guys to put their name on the list. So they were foregoing a night of worship to see these other guys hear the gospel.
Homie in there. Wow.
Yep. So it was really cool, and we've seen a lot of them through the years that have gotten out and come and visited and
get out of here,
sharing their testimony of what God's done in their life, and so it's cool. It is.
That's real stuff, Gary.
Yeah.
Would you consider yourself an evangelist? Like, what's your whole ideology on like that type of word? Because we would be considered. One of my good friends is Catholic, so he always calls me either a Protestant or an evangelical something or other. And like I said, I'm going through a lot right now, so I'm like, screw every label or whatever. I just need to get back to the basics. But I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
We're all called to be evangelists. We're told to do the work of an evangelist.
I knew this was coming.
That is, it is. It's not. It doesn't mean that you've got to stand on a soapbox in the corner with a bullhorn.
Right.
Doing the work of an evangelist is just telling people the good news, what Jesus has done. The gospel, that's what it means, is good news. Is good news for people. So doing the work of an evangelist is sharing this good news with people that are around you.
Wow, man.
See, I when I was in the fire service, I was in the academy, and we were in a leadership class, and they were talking about the structure of the fire service, and how the chain of command works. And so you've got the firefighters, and then the lieutenants and the captains and the deputy chiefs and assistant chiefs, and the chief at the top, and I'm in the back of the room with my hand up, and I said, your pyramid's upside down. And they're looking at me. I said, if you continue to run the fire service that way, you're going to have a dysfunctional mess. Because you've got the chief sitting on the top, the prima donna, and all the lowlifes, all the firefighters underneath.
Okay, yeah.
You flip that over, and the chief and the chief staff are the support mechanism for the ones that are working. It changes the dynamic. It changes the perspective of the guys that are working when they know that I'm being supported by these guys. I don't have to just report to the guy up in the top, but he's the one that's supporting me.
Wow, that's interesting, because even like Light of the World, and my dad's very much, I'm not exactly sure how he got to this point, and I'm probably going to have other people like on like later in the year to talk about this, but I don't know if it was out of specifically like when we would see a lot of the head pastor thing, like maybe I know that's not exactly what you're referencing or whatever, but it's very interesting how my dad's kind of whole perspective is sometimes like, Dad, you're so radical on this specific subject, like I'm with you like 85% of the way, but the other 15 I'm not so sure.
Well, we use the term, right?
Do you have elders at your church, by the way?
Right? I'm the minister.
Yeah.
Right? Well, what does the word minister mean? Servant. That's really what you're saying. It's not some title where you puff your chest out and say, I'm the minister here. The minister is the servant. And my job as a pastor is to equip the saints to do the work of the ministry. It's not so everybody comes and listens to 45 minutes of me ranting and then put their money in an offering plate and do it again next week. My job is to build them up and teach them and equip them and give them opportunity to do what God's called them to do. That's how the church grows.
Yeah.
So it's that servant. The leadership is leading. It's not barking out orders. It's not telling people what to do. It's showing them what to do.
Yeah, I think some other pastors have lost the plot, like the overall Christendom.
Yeah,
I'm glad to see that you're swimming against the the current.
When I was in the academy, I was in level 2. We were doing a hazmat training, and they had a tanker truck there, and they cracked the valve on the bottom. It was just water, and it starts water starts coming out, and it's supposed to simulate a hazardous spill.
Yeah.
So there's about 80 feet away, there's a mountain of sand, 2 wheelbarrows, and about 20 shovels, and there's like 20 guys. So, everybody goes over. Well, there's only 2 wheelbarrows, so there's only so much you can do. And so the 2 wheelbarrows are going back and forth, dumping sand to build this containment area, and there's like 15 guys standing there doing nothing. I can't stand and do nothing. It drives me crazy. So I just grabbed one of the shovels, and I grabbed a shovel full, and I walked the 80 feet, and I dropped it in the pile. And I walked back, and I grabbed another shovel full, and I walked back, and I dropped it in the pile. Well, pretty soon, one of these guys says, "Hey, you guys, let's go help him." And so now everybody's they're all taking shovels. Once that's happening, I moved from that, and I started building the overflow area. And there's another guy says, "Hey, you 4 guys, come on over here. Let's help him." And they come over, and they're building the overflow area, and I move on to something else. And the drill instructor pulls me aside. They all call me Padre. He goes, "Padre, are you ADD?" And I said, "No, why do you say I'm He said, "Well, you don't finish anything. You're over there, you're over there, you're over there. You don't finish anything." And I said, "Well, it's kind of my leadership style." He goes, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Well, 5 minutes ago, you had 15 guys that were standing there doing nothing. Look at your drill yard.
Yeah.
Everybody's working, and I didn't say a single word. I didn't tell one person to do anything." And I said, that guy and that guy are your future officers, because they recognized a need and they mobilized the troops to jump in and help. Wow. Those 2 guys are going to be your future officers, mark my words. And he looks at me and says, "You did this with intent." I said, "Absolutely did. That's how I work. It's my leadership style. You model things for people, and people will follow you."
Yeah.
That's what Jesus did. It's what he called us to do. He didn't call us to go make converts. He called us to go make disciples. So
say it louder, Gary. Say it louder.
Model it for people. When you model it for people, they follow. That's really what we're called to do. Not bark out orders and tell somebody how rotten and awful and scummy they are. It's to lead them to the truth. It's to lead them to Jesus.
It's so interesting too, because like a big part of what's going on online these days is like debate culture, and like what's like scoring points when you do a debate or whatever. Mm-hmm. Whether you're talking, and I see like a lot of division in Christianity in some ways, where it's like we're like, like major in the majors and minor in the minors. Mm-hmm. And people are so concerned with, like I said, some really close friends of mine are like, "Hey, well, you're not fully experiencing like the Eucharist or different things." And I'm like, what does that have to do with, like, I remember I was telling another friend of mine as well, I'm like, who happened to be Catholic. I was like, we were talking about the state of the world, and I was saying, I'm like, me and you, like, meaning like your theological group and my theological group, whatever mine is, I'm like, we need to be united, because look how terrible and awful the world is. Like, I just did like a 7-hour deep dive on Epstein, which was quite the ordeal. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, how can I be like, yes, I want people to convert to Christ, but I don't, like, I always just think of that simple scripture where Paul says, like, as long as the gospel is being preached, I'll rejoice in that. And but to a certain degree, I understand there's things where, like, you should learn, the statutes or the doctrines of the faith. And even at times, maybe you have to have a political debate, or maybe you have to disagree or hash out your faith with fear and trembling. Yeah. But at times, it seems to me that there's just a good amount of pride in it. And for me, in my own life, just through a lot of things I've gone through over the last couple of years, I've been very much like, I'm trying to think what the word is, where obviously I'm the phrase, like, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater comes out, but it's even more like, when I look at the scriptures, whatever, like, Jesus was a humble man. Like, he didn't have arrogance in him. Like, mm-hmm. At times he might have flipped over a table or two, or called out the Pharisees as to what they actually were. Mm-hmm. But there's this humble, contrite part of faith that I think we really miss as, or at least some Christians my age, because I'm like, we don't have to like score points anymore. Like that has nothing to do with the kingdom of God. And once again, I just, when it came to, because I had a little bit of a time where I'm like, oh, I know the basic parts of faith, but I'm just gonna bring all these like awesomely great but emotional like arguments about why I believe my certain side of Christianity, and I'm just like, their world is so terrible. There's so many bad things going on. I'm like, I need to be like, I even told Dad this. Once again, I won't spend a lot of time on it, but I'm like, I want to be a Christian that can be effective and useful to God in the world of where we have, like a pedophile like running the country. Yeah.
Well, we
and it's a lot of heavy stuff, but
it becomes all of this stuff has become very divisive, and
right.
We have become this generation, more than any that I've ever experienced, has lost the ability to communicate.
Right. Why do you think that is?
All this technology. We think we're connected, right?
The phone.
Yeah, we think we're connected. I've got 1,500 friends on Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat or, and we think we're so connected, but you walk into a room and there's 20 people there and nobody's talking.
Right.
And we've lost the ability to have dialogue, to express what we believe, because quite honestly, most of this young generation doesn't know what they believe. They know what they've been told they should believe,
right.
and they, there were people. This attack on Iran wasn't even 4 hours old, and there were protest groups holding signs. Like,
right.
They're protesting everything, but yet if you ask most of them, what is it specifically that you're protesting? They can't tell you. They don't know,
right?
Because it's this emotional argument, and so if you try to have a discussion with somebody, I don't think that boys should be using a girl's locker room.
Right.
I think that is just complete insanity.
Yeah.
But I get labeled a homophobe or a bigot or a racist or a transphobe or whatever. There's this emotional response rather than a logical response. You get labeled, and this emotional blast comes at you because they can't articulate their position, and we've lost that. There was a time in my generation and my dad's generation that you could disagree with somebody and even vehemently disagree with them and still be friends.
Yeah, I'm
watching families that don't talk to each other because he voted for Trump and she voted for Kamala, and they hate each other now because of a political difference. And I'm just like,
it's not only like I hate you, it's like I'm going to do my best to let everyone know that you're terrible.
Yeah.
Because of what you voted for. And even Dad was saying, I'm like, Dad, when you were growing up, like, he's like, Ben, I didn't even know who voted for who. Like, when I was, once in a while people would talk about it or whatever, but it's bummer because I've even had family members at times that would ask me about who I voted for, even like a couple years ago before right now. And I'd be like, oh, I know what I'm getting myself into. So I'm like, how do I answer? What do I want to say or do? And it was just, I feel like just the divisiveness has entered like church and whatever when people want to.
It absolutely has. I've seen multiple factions when it comes to especially politics, right? You've got some people that are, well, anything that Donald Trump says, you've got to be behind, right? Because he's right and he's always right and he's always right. And if you don't stand with Donald Trump, then there's something wrong with you. You're not a Christian. And then you've got the other side of that where you've got people that are just pacifists and think that, well, Jesus wouldn't want us going to war, and so all of this is wrong. And so you've got all these factions even within the church. And I think that we're
like, where do you begin?
But we lose focus of why we're here, and that's what the devil wants. The devil wants us arguing about politics. He wants us arguing about positions.
Gary, I feel that way.
Because
I feel that way myself.
If he gets the church sidetracked in political issues, we're not preaching the gospel.
Yeah, I saw this one preacher that I follow online that was saying the church has never been more loud, but they've never been more ineffective.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, that hurt.
Well, after Charlie
'Cause-
Kirk's death, we saw a lot of people. We saw a lot of people come, and they were coming with questions.
to your
Yeah, because they wanted truth, and and these were people that didn't necessarily follow him.
Yeah.
But after his death, started listening to some of the things he said, and they had questions like, this guy's talking about faith. What is this? Where does this all come from? And again, I think using a means to get an introduction is one thing, but letting something be your entire platform, and I think that's what Charlie did so well. He used politics or current events as a means of starting a conversation, but his end goal was always to bring them to the truth of the faith. And again, I'm not saying that everything Charlie Kirk did was right or
really?
proper. That's not what I'm saying.
That's interesting to hear. Yeah.
But I'm just saying that sometimes we get so sidetracked with all the details of things that we forget why we're here.
Yeah, my parents are always saying when I, it feels like every other day I feel existential about one thing or another. And, I very much have always felt like that verse where it says, like, don't be blown like chaff in the wind, like one way or the other, like wherever the wind blows you go. I find that like one of a very, I guess just convicting verse or whatever.
Yeah.
And I guess one thing I'm struggling with a lot, Gary, is like, how can I need to know about, there's a lot of things going on in the world right now. You don't need to know every single thing, but I'm like, how can I be a Christian and stand up for all these things going on in the world, but then I have Charlie Kirk getting killed, and then we are bombing Iran off of arguably, in my humble opinion, a similar pretense as like Iraq and Afghanistan. Yeah. Maybe it's not. I guess with this stuff, it's more like time will tell. It's not an immediate.
Yeah. This is close to home because I have my son Ben.
Right. Yeah, I totally forgot.
Ben and Jared are both being deployed in a couple of months here. They can't tell us where, obviously, but knowing what's going on, there's as a parent, do
you think like they're going to
the Middle East? Yeah. But so for, as a parent, I've got that, sitting there. So this is close to home for me. I think this is a religious war, even though on our side it's more political. There is no war that has ever been waged in a Muslim nation that is not a religious war. Their ideology drives them to violence every single time. If you take a Muslim and you radicalize them, you end up with a terrorist.
Yeah.
If you take a Christian and you radicalize them, you end up with somebody that gives away all their money and helps everybody that's around them, right? You couldn't have two more polar opposite ways of thinking. And
yeah, outside of the Proud Boys, like overall that's
oh yeah.
Yeah, there's parts of me where I'm interested in like understanding like Muslims in a way. I shouldn't say in a way, but just period, because I try to think of like I listen to some of these like anti-war libertarians that are, at times some people would make the assumption that it's like, oh, you're just crying about every time the U.S. goes to war, and obviously war is a terrible and horrible thing, and sometimes it needs to happen, but I'm just like, it's, you mentioned Trump or whatever, like there's been several videos that have come out where he openly admits, he's like, yeah, I don't think I'm getting into heaven. It's just like, I know that he is very.
I spent about 45 minutes with him.
Get out of here.
I did. Yeah.
All right, you got to tell me now.
Yeah, so the first time he ran,
What's up, guys? Thanks for making to the end of the video of part 1 with Gary Williams. Part 2 will be out later in April. I've got some other podcasts logged about current things going on in the world right now, so I'm going to push those out, and I'm going to have part 2, like I said, be out in a couple weeks later. Once again, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. We'll see you next week. Peace.